Hi, and welcome to this brief excerpt from The Fox and the Scorpion Meet Cold Turkey. This particular day, this entry in the book, just covers the episode when we went to Sri Lanka to visit our sponsored family. Wednesday the 7th of March 2012. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Happy Wednesday. I start my first proper yoga training today, which could be interesting. Together with footy, on a Thursday, it might well help to shift the excess around the midriff. The press-ups have dropped off a bit, whereas I was banging out 50 every day, I'm now at about 30, and I can definitely feel the extra weight I'm lifting. Eyes like piss holes in the snow today, after baby's antics at 4 AM. Just what exactly she was screaming at, or for, it was actually difficult to establish, but suffice to say, the little miss kept us up all night, and now I have 2 red rings where my eyes used to be. Met an Indian guy yesterday, knocking doors in Dora Doyle. The conversation went from boilers to food in no time. It turned out he knew a few of the lads on the Munster cricket circuit. So this guy said he was moving to a house with all heating, but needed to get someone approved by the gas board to connect the gas hob for him. Maybe there was a job in it for one of the lads. That's knocking on doors for you. 1 minute, all quiet, then next minute you meet someone, make a connection. When I asked him where he was actually from, and he said South India, near Madras, I guessed I knew his eyes would light up when I told him that I was quite fond of idlis, dosas, renowned South Indian cuisine. When he said he was Tamil, and that they spoke the oldest language known to man, that reminded me of our honeymoon in Sri Lanka. When he told me that he had actually played cricket for Limerick, I couldn't resist but tell him about our trip to Kandy, where we saw famous Sri Lankan cricketer Muralitharan sensationally break the world record in front of his home crowd. Now that was something else. It had been the cliched trip of a lifetime. From Colombo, the capital city, where we had the incongruent experience of witnessing a fully laden Christmas tree while the weather was blazing hot, we had headed north to an elephant sanctuary in Pinawali. From there, we'd headed towards the breathtaking tourist attraction at Sigiriya Rock, overnighting in beautiful forest-dwelling accommodation in Habarani, near the ancient capital of Anuradhapura. After a couple of days on the road together, we'd gotten to know our guide a bit better. He was a young father, and owning a car meant he could get work. We were evidently his ticket to earning a few quid, and he was our ticket to having a good time. And thus, a symbiotic relationship emerged. I had gently persuaded him into teaching me some conversational Sinhalese so that I could hold my own in a bit of banter with any locals. And we implored him to help us pull off a pre-planned visit to meet with a family we sponsor through a Dublin-based charity. I had been delighted when our tour guide had confirmed that he would indeed be able to depart from the official itinerary with us. We appreciated his efforts in liaising with the charity staff in Colombo to locate our intended destination. When we first got involved, we found the people at Child Fund to be really helpful and highly professional. Not only that, but we found the local staff, both in Colombo and Polonnaruwa, absolutely brilliant in helping us realise our dream of meeting our sponsored child. It had all started many years earlier, when we had received a flyer through the door, explaining that for a little monthly donation we could sponsor a child, allowing for them to receive materials to help them with reading, writing and so on, with the focus on education and creativity. I had said to the missus that no matter how bad things got for us, no matter what our own circumstances, surely we could always find ourselves in a position to do at least a bit of something to help others. And she agreed. Although there were tick boxes on the forms that you could specify if you preferred to sponsor a boy or girl in Africa, South America, Asia and so on, I deliberately left all the fields blank so that fate should pair us up with whomsoever we could potentially help. As it happened, we were matched with a family who have a daughter just a little older than our eldest, and we learned that she would attend a children's project in Polonnaruwa in the northeast of Sri Lanka. It meant a lot to us to be able to do that, and I have no problem in admitting that it was indeed part of our rationale behind choosing Sri Lanka as a honeymoon destination, despite the warning from the travel agent that it was unsafe to go there. We had budgeted for a fortnight in South Africa, but in the end we made the right choice. It was a magical time. We booked 10 days in all, 5 days touring around the country and 5 days based in a hotel on the south coast. Needless to say, we did not heed the warning. In fact, it had potentially made us even more determined to go. The cricket had just been an additional bonus, a sideshow which made the trip even more exciting. So for years we'd been in touch via written correspondence, and to this day we still keep in touch via letters and cards. The focus of our correspondence, namely Shashikala, would regularly write and send pictures and cards. Charity staff would translate the letters from Sinhalese into English and vice versa for them when I wrote. Oftentimes we would receive beautifully handmade, lovely cards wishing us Happy Christmas, Happy Easter and so on. The detail and intricacy of these cards would be striking. Shashikala clearly has a talent for arts and crafts. They even include progress reports these days and a colour-printed newsletter. And she's not a young child anymore, rather a young lady. Since, at a year older than our own eldest daughter, she must be about 13 or 14 by now. Who knows, maybe the charity might like to fly us out to Sri Lanka again. Sometimes they focus on individual cases for the purposes of a video or a television broadcast to promote the organisation. That'd be absolutely mighty to take part in something like that. Who knows, maybe we might be invited to have the opportunity to go back there one day, perhaps an anniversary, like 10, 15 and 20 years on, to meet them all again. It would be a good idea, and we could even raise much appreciated funds. In all honesty, at the time, I was most disheartened to discover that our sponsored family, who like us numbered 5, 2 adults and 3 kids, were all residing in a single room dwelling. That had sparked phone calls to Colombo to find out exactly where the money we had been sending had gone. When we met the office workers at the project office, they explained that the money from all the sponsors was pooled and appropriated to several different projects which they were working on concurrently. To us, our sponsored family were a priority. To them, they were one of several families they could help. The wall of the project staff office yielded bar charts, pie charts and flow diagrams to the same effect. I understood what they were saying, but since I was caught up in the emotion of the occasion, that just didn't quite cut it with me, and I was furious. We had not been sending an absolute fortune, but what we had sent, over the years when converted into Sri Lankan dollars, would surely have been enough to ensure that this family were not eating, sleeping and washing in the same room. We were not allowed to give them cash gifts, but we did bring presents. Clearly, they were not being treated as a priority by their own people. Even more striking, when we met the project staff, was the revelation that in the 30-year history of the charity, we were the first ever visitors from Ireland. It was a hard enough place to find, all right, and a long, long way from the capital city. But first ever? Dismissing protocol and the very obvious class boundaries which were in place, we invited the children of our sponsored family to tuck into the sweet treats which had been put out on the table in a lovely spread. Shashikala has both a younger brother and younger sister, and they looked hungry. Like they could have done with a good meal. We were having none of the royalty lark. It was difficult to understand, for us, the way they were trying to treat us like we were upper class because we were pale-skinned and sent money, and although they meant well, the project staff were like middle class because they had office jobs, computers and aircon, and our sponsored family were lower class because they were poor and had no way of escaping the cycle of poverty. Frustratingly, this seemed like a very well-entrenched caste system, or class system, dating back to the times of colonial imperialism. At one point, we were even requested to sit at the table they had prepared, and leave our friends at a table in another room. I guess to them, it was just a cultural thing, but it was something which horrified us. Putting the sword to their antiquated and seemingly British protocols, we entreated them all to take tea with us and eat the sweet cakes. Despite looking uncertain, my wife and I managed to persuade them it was okay, so they obliged us. Maybe it was my working class Mancunian roots, or the student socialist in me, but I was adamant that our sponsored family be treated in no less a manner than us. Looking surprised and somewhat guilty, as the project staff looked on rather admonishingly, we all sat together at the same table, sharing stories and smiles. Thereafter, we took some photographs and said our goodbyes. The last I heard was that they had been built a house and were just waiting for a roof to go on it, which was a positive development indeed. I would recommend anyone to get involved if they are interested in helping to make a small difference. Our meeting was truly a magical event, very emotional and heartwarming, As I had brought all of Shashikala's correspondence with me, so too had Anusha, Shashikala's mother. She brought a folder with all of my correspondence to them. I learned that they had also planted a jack plant in my honour, which was apparently coming on very well. Despite the language barrier, which we overcame thanks to our tour guide, who was an able translator, we managed basic conversation. However, words failed to capture what we experienced that day. I just kept looking over at Shashikala and smiling, and she kept looking back with a sparkle in her eyes, returning the smile. Words were not necessary to convey what our visit meant to one another. To see their hope and faith in us, and their gratitude that we had made the effort to make the 11,000-mile round trip to visit them in the flesh, was touching and humbling. At one point, the missus was in floods of tears, and nearly got me started. Upon leaving Polonnaruwa, we headed straight for Kandy in the heart of the country. Located in a hilly and mountainous region of central Sri Lanka, we felt it might be possible to try and catch a bit of the cricket. There was a series of test matches happening at the time between England and Sri Lanka, and practically everyone in the country was glued to a television set, following the action ball by ball. I had made contact via a few emails before we left Ireland with a Sri Lankan tour operator based in England, who had given me his phone number and assured me to call him if indeed we were going to make it there and were still looking for tickets for the game. When we arrived in a hot and busy Kandy, I was keen yet apprehensive. It seemed very unlikely that we would actually be able to meet him and go, but I was determined to try and make it happen. After dropping our bags into the hotel we would stay in that night, noting the sign on the wall of our room which advised us to ensure the windows were locked in order to keep out the monkeys, our guide followed up on his excellent gesture with facilitating us to meet Shashikala and her family by ringing my contact from his mobile. After a rushed and practically incomprehensible conversation, it was arranged for us to hot-foot it down to the Asgaria cricket ground. The weather was dry and hot, the roads were dusty, and as we swung around in the back of a tuk-tuk, we clung on for all we were worth, a veritable white-knuckle ride. Now, somewhat accustomed to the crazy manner on the roads, we still winced in anticipation of a disaster, as about 7 vehicles all converged on one tiny gap in the traffic. If it was bad for us, trying to dodge cars, it was even worse for the cyclists, trying to dodge the cars and the tuk-tuks. Evidently, there was a great sense of urgency to get to the game, and not just because history was being made. That, tinged with the intangible uncertainty that we were relying upon someone we did not know to help us arrange a meeting with someone else we did not know, in a place we did not know, made it all the more thrilling. Clearly, logic dictated that it was highly unlikely that we would be able to pull it off, and as a random and impetuous cacophony of horns blared and tooted in anguish, as cyclists and motorcyclists darted for cover from the onrushing taxis and automobiles, we swung, gasping for breath, around another uphill bend. Madness! Unfortunately, even though it was mid-afternoon, on the final day's play, the bad news was that our contact was still looking for full price on the cost of the match tickets. But the good news was that we had managed to find a stadium, make it past the security guards and police, and our man had 3 tickets available and was coming to meet us. Results! It certainly ate into the budget, forking out for 3 full-price tickets, but I felt it was worth it, and it felt like an appropriate gesture to say thanks to our guide by getting him a ticket. It would hardly have been cool to leave him waiting for us outside the ground, but his efforts in helping us to make it to Polonnaruwa to visit Shashikala and family meant I had the opportunity to return the compliment. Within minutes, we had taken our seats, and I took a deep breath as I surveyed the crowd with wonder, relief, and admiration. It was almost a full house. England were batting to save the game, and just to confirm to me that I had indeed arrived at the right time and at the right place, there were even 2 or 3 big Manchester City flags in evidence amongst the stands, and proudly on display. We were not the only Blues on tour. The missus groaned that it was boring, but even she had to accept that it was a special day, a special occasion, and after such a hair-raising ride on the streets of Kandy in our tuk-tuk, that the relative calm in the shade of the stadium was welcome indeed. With tongue firmly in cheek, I had to remind her what better honeymoon present than seeing the England cricket team. As Matt Pryor crashed an off-drive to the boundary, a glance at the scoreboard revealed that all was not lost. If they could get to tea without losing another wicket, there was a chance we might even win the game and reach the total set before close of play. It was unlikely, but it was possible. Looking back, it was actually a remarkable game. England had somehow surrendered a decent first innings lead of 100 runs. A spirited second innings by the hosts had seen them declare on 442 for 8, leaving England an unlikely target of exactly 350 runs to win. We were around 220 for 6 by tea, and the final session on the final day's play loomed, and all three results, win, lose or draw, were still possible. Bell and Pryor had put on a decent partnership in excess of 100 runs, and the longer they could stay together, the bigger the possibility of attaining the unlikely targets. The home crowd was excited, the natives were restless, and this tourist was still in awe as the Barmy Army trumpeter let out a volley of notes to the drunken cheers of the travelling support. It was awesome. I was in my element and absolutely loving it. Not since being in the midst of the West Indies supporters at Old Trafford as a kid had I sampled such an atmosphere in the crowd at a test match. In fact, not since that day, now I come to think of it, had I actually been at another test match. Everyone was hooked, and the tension increased with every ball that we survived. Growing in confidence, Pryor surged to his 50, and I remember thinking that he was good enough to get into the England team as a batsman. Such was his technique, regardless of his duties with the wicket-keeping gloves. Another majestic shot, this time a cover drive by Bell, and with a pint in hand, I posed for a photo opportunity in front of the huge flag of St George with MCFC Levenshulme emblazoned across it nearby. The Barmy Army were in full song, and this time the trumpeter keenly heralding the cheers of the English supporters with his own unique abridged version of the Johnny Cash song, Ring of Fire, which had us in raptures of laughter as well as excitement. Crash, another boundary from Pryor, and all of a sudden we could do it. Hope mingled with disbelief. No way! Are we really going to do it? Come on, England! Our guide and host had ingratiated himself with some local supporters and was enjoying the atmosphere too. Grateful for the ticket I had bought him, I was happy to look on and see him genuinely enjoying himself. All of a sudden, he was enjoying himself a bit more, and as the partnership was broken, the home crowd broke out in huge excitement as Morley bowled Pryor. Shite! 248 for 7 and we were back in trouble. 100 runs to win, a couple of hours left to bat, and 3 wickets still remaining. So, whilst Belly was still at the crease, all hope was not lost, and all 3 results were still possible. What drama! Boom! 249 for 8, and Moralia bowled Bell, with only a single run added. The Sri Lankans on the field and in the crowd went totally crazy, having removed England's last hope. After an hour and a half of painstaking batting, intelligent and diligent run accumulating, and deft and swift attacking stroke play, within 2 overs of spin magic, we had gone from hope to nope. However, it was impossible to be angry or annoyed. Disappointed maybe, but delighted for the home fans around us, who by now were positively delirious. Dancing with hoops of delight and unbridled passion, they set off in a spontaneous conga, singing the praises of their hometown hero and Kandy native, Sri Lankan spin bowler and new world record holder Muttiah Muralitharan. What a guy. Bang! Now it was 253 for 9, and England were definitely gone. Morley had claimed his 3rd wicket in quick succession, and we were all truly amazed at his achievement. Always smiling and very modest, he was a true great and super ambassador for the game. Game over, just like that, and what a way to make history, breaking the world record in your hometown, on your home ground, and in front of your home fans. Our driver and buddy was lost somewhere in the crowd and partying to the max, all big white teeth grinning from ear to ear, and who could blame him?